one of my favorite TV series, and you can watch it today on Hulu, and you can also, there's one of the independent channels out there that's free that you're able to watch this series, is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Joss Whedon's Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Now, however you think of Joss Whedon, and I've always said this, I said, one thing about directors, go back to the 30s, 40s, and 50s when it comes to directors. You'll always hear nightmare stories about them, and that's always been a situation because some of them can tend to be a prima donna or they want to get it their way, and sometimes the actor or actress, they think that they're, bigger than life, which some of them were, but the director is the one that has to put the movie together. He or she's the chief there, and what they say goes, and sometimes people get upset to what they say. But the thing about it is, I loved Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It was one of my big favorites. And the thing about it is, it kind of left off after the last season. It could have gone beyond that. If you picked up the comics, the season 8 comics, they could have gone with that story, tighten it up a little bit. And then, you heard recently they try to bring out the comic again and have her a more gristled Buffy, where she's much older. Times have changed and stuff like that after the end. If you've not seen Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I hate to ruin it for you. At the end of season 5, with the battle, and I tell you, I love the idea of this battle of the first, the evil, the manifestation of evil itself, that she defeated it and opened up the Slayer lineage to multiple Slayers. In other words, anyone who was a possible Slayer, who was going to be a possible, depending on who died at what time, was the replacement. The whole entire line of Slayers was born and was created into an army, which that goes into the comic itself. I recommend to read the comic. It's the same thing with the Angel series, did continue on in the comic as well. Now, there was a reboot coming. Yes, they were going to do a TV reboot. And they were going to say, well, we're going to make it for the modern era because there was never a black vampire slayer. We need a black vampire slayer on there. And this is their thoughts and promises, but they never saw the TV series. But we're going to read a little bit into this because basically right now, and this is off of Huffington Post, Buffy the Vampire Slayer reboot is now on pause until its eventual resurrection. The reboot, which was set to feature a black woman in the lead role, was announced years ago, with Joss Whedon returning as executive producer, which I doubt that's going to happen at this point. A new generation will proceed the Slayer list for a time being, as the long-gested reboot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer got well staked. The planned reboot of the iconic WB series, starring Michelle Gellar, was first announced in 2018, promising a contemporary spin on the supernatural drama, building on the mythology of the original. The project has been put on pause indefinitely, according to executive producer Gail Berman. The news was revealing during the recent episode of Hollywood's Reporter Top 5 podcast, which relayed the terminology, essentially meaning the series is stuck in purgatory. No additional details about the status of the reboot were given, but as any fan of the series is well aware, Buffy has fought her way back from far more dire circumstances. A black actress was set to take over the title role in the reboot, which never had an official network home, but was to be produced by series creator Joss Whedon, with Monica Oswald as serving as the showrunner. I do apologize if I pronounced that wrong, the name wrong. Joss Whedon's brilliant and beautiful series can't be replicated. Oswald Breen, who also worked on Joss Whedon's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., wrote when the reboot was first announced, but here we are 20 years later, and the world seems a lot scarier. So maybe times we meet a new Slayer, and that's all I can say. Now the thing is, when you hear they said, "Oh yeah, we need to be diverse" and stuff like that. The show was very diverse at the time, and you may say, "Well, we need a black Slayer." Now, most people, if you're a fan of the show, know that there was a black Slayer in the series for a season. And that was Kendra Young, who was played by Bianca Lawson, who was a Jamaican Slayer who came to Sunnydale after the temporary death of Buffy, which activated her. And she was sent to Sunnydale. And this is where we get the two Slayer situation, which now we get with Faith. And now we have multiple Slayers throughout. But the thing about it is that when people start to spew their mouth out, they say there's never been this, there's never been that. Are you sure? Are you sure that the glass ceiling has been not broken? Are you sure about that? This is the stupidity of what goes on in Hollywood. And we said this before, just a little while ago, the way Hollywood is thinking, the activism and stuff like that goes on. If you wanted to do a series, say, on a vampire slayer, don't call it Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Give the Kendra character a backstory. Maybe that's what you should do. Give her a backstory in Jamaica. That would be interesting to the fans. See where Kendra all started before she got to this level. That she was she was already being trained prior to this. That she was already being prepared to be that she was a potential Slayer, and she had a watcher named Sam Zabuto, if I'm reading that right from the wiki on there. And basically, we get to see everything before her death, her story before she leaves for Sunnydale. See, there I go. I'll give you that one for free, producer Josh. Don't carry on. If you're going to carry on a Buffy the Vampire series, carry it on to season 8. That's the way to do it. Maybe you might want to go a couple of years later, a Slayer army versus the U.S. military. Maybe you might have them come back the way in the comic was. Maybe you might want to have some of the old villains come back that might have survived the destruction of Sunnydale. Just have that thought in your mind. If you notice something. That a lot of the vampire series that were getting reboot have been canceled. CW was going to do Dark Shadows a while back on there. That got canceled. Now you got Buffy. This has been canceled. This has been happening for quite some time now. There were a couple other things on the burners, and it never really got beyond, or it might have gone to a pilot level and just didn't get beyond that. The zombie stuff, the vampire stuff, the werewolf. You could say a little bit of the Frankenstein stuff, the mummy. A lot of this stuff they try to recreate over and over and over again. But the thing about it, what is the major issue, is they keep making it for the modern era. They never go back to the mysticism, the mythology of the creature itself. They're always going to the point where, they just, like the Tom Cruise mummy movie, and they just throw it in that way. I mean, the Brendan Fraser mummy was a good concept on there. I wouldn't call it a Universal's monster type. But, go back and look at the old Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, mummy movies on there. I mean, even the Abbott and Costello one was pretty fun to watch. You had all these. Why did they work out? They made them creepy. Basically the techniques to film, even if it was in black and white, the techniques, the look, they made it horrifying. Yeah, you could do it with special effects, but they didn't have big special effects back then. You know, stop with all the massive special effects and write a good story. Don't take stories that have already been done, finished, and reboot them like a Dark Shadows or a Buffy. You've just watched a segment from our Madman Cafe show every Sunday night at 6 p.m. You can catch it over at Odyssey. Check in the description below for the link that will lead you to our Q2Cast TV site.